Hey dudes, Cole's here. Today I'm going to be going through the Hero Global tier list. So I spent the last 3 or 4 hours getting every single global ability for each hero in Heroes vs. Hordes. But this should generally give you a sense of like the better heroes for their globals. I tried to use the talent system as a rough gauge on like what is a super high value global. If it's a legendary talent, that's much better than having a basic talent. That way you can mentally gauge kind of like what is a good global and what's not so good global. So there are 54 heroes. I'm going to try and go through each one really quick. Some will get more time than others. What you'll see as a pattern here is the older heroes have better globals than the newer heroes. As like a general rule of thumb, they put a lot of power into these globals back in the day, and they've been putting less in nowadays. All right, so first up is Assassin. So Assassin actually has one of the better set of globals in the game. Many of his globals have status effect duration, and he also has 10% increase to damage from his forge. Those two things make him incredibly valuable. Next up is Barbarian. Barbarian also just, we're coming up on a bunch of S tier heroes right now. So the big one that's obvious here is his cooldown, and he's got a 2.5% global cooldown at his level 3. He also has a percent buff damage to missing health in modes like Boss Brawl or in Hard Mode Arena. It's actually super valuable to have that. So a very, very strong global buff set. Next up is Shield Warden. He's actually got, poor little guy, he's got awful globals, like surprisingly bad. He's unfortunately one of the newer adventure heroes, and so they've just gotten like pretty crap globals generally. But he's got 2+ damage, which are like I rated as the worst, and then he's got 2+ armor globals, which I rated as the second worst. The one thing is his faction globals are fantastic. So for Nightmare mode, his faction camp is plus 50 armor is huge. Faction camp bonuses, particularly post patch 3.40, are really big. Faction camp, right? So when you go to the faction camp in the heroes tab, those are actually becoming incredibly valuable. So we grab Warlord. Warlord's globals are actually pretty poor. They are a lot of damage bonuses straight up. And then the one interesting one is Bleed. So he's got a 0.1 times increase to Bleed. So if you have Bleed, it's fantastic. But in order to get Bleed, it's not a base kind of like status. You're going to need to have either someone like Assassin or Warlord actually doing bleeds, or you're going to need to get it from a weapon somewhere, and they're only available in special weapons. So that's this one saving grace. Everything else about Warlord's globals are actually pretty weak. Next up is Pirate Queen. Pirate Queen actually has a decent set of globals. The big one is her 3-star Forge is a 1% cooldown global, which is fantastic. Next up is Paladin. Paladin's an interesting case. He's got a lot of pushback based into his globals, which is like hard to get, but also not great. And so he's really good for like more defensive builds, but he does have a damage multiple on his Forge of 2.5, and he's got a 2.5% area of effect increase from his second global. So he's basically like very much, like you can kind of see there, right? There are trade-offs. 2 of the 6 are very valuable. Plague Cleaver's also somewhere here in the middle. He's all about poison damage. So if your hero does poison damage, he's a big boost to them. The big one that he boosts up is Assassin. So a lot of his globals and faction bonuses just like make Assassin stronger. Globally, you're going to need to have poison damage in your build in order for him to do like add benefit. But that's actually super valuable in Boss Brawl. So it's a nice global for Boss Brawl because you're going to be poisoning most bosses. Next up, we got the Bombardier. The Bombardier, man, he's actually, he was just part of the most recent event, and I was trying to figure out like who's better, Artificer, Bombardier, and then Sentry Specialist. And I knew Bombardier's globals were good, but I didn't realize how good they were in relation to everybody. He's actually got top 3 globals in the game. He is the only hero with a plus straight projectile global. And then his other globals are actually also really, really strong. So he's got a couple like silly like plus damage guys, but his faction bonus is plus 5% area of effect. And then his Forge is a 5 multiple to damage. So top 3 globals in the game right here with Bombardier. Next up is Leprechaun. Leprechaun has got he's got special faction coin bonus. That's kind of like his thing. It does have a 2.5% critical strike chance in his second global, which is, you'll take that. But I have him here somewhere. If you value coins, you could very much move him up into B or A. Lionheart, I think, is actually really sad. Lionheart is actually one of the worst globals in the game. He's right there with Shield Warden. Shield Warden at least gets armor. Lionheart just gets damage. And he gets really the base like plus 12.5 damage that they were just giving out for like a couple of months here to like random heroes. And so his globals are awful. All right, Santa. So for Santa, I put a tremendous amount of value into his gold key chance, like a tremendously insane, crazy amount of value into those. I'm trying to grind up to heroic gear, and those are going to save me days of my life. The 5% that you get from his Forge is crazy. The 1% you get for the faction is also awesome. So those 2 sources of gold key chance are huge, and I value them tremendously. Next up is Knight. He's actually got pretty solid globals. They're not going to like be the best in the whole game, but they're not bad, especially for like one of the starter heroes. Knight's big bonus is plus area of effect. That's huge between his second global and his forge. You're getting 5% there, which is great. He also has increased damage to elites and bosses, which is great for boss brawl. His faction bonus is armor, also incredibly valuable for nightmare mode. So that's later in the game. It makes everyone else in that faction really, really strong, and that's part of the reason why like Warlord and Werebeast and Shield Warden are so great for nightmare mode. Next up is Crystalmancer. Again, the newer adventure heroes, while they have some like fun scaling in their own damage, their globals are really, really bad. And so she's just like a plus damage global kind of gal here, and so not very good. Next up is Bunny. He's actually got the worst globals right now. So he's got a plus coin bonus, which I don't value all that much, and it's faction specific. And then everything else is plus armor and plus a little bit of damage. So just really, really bad. And then he doesn't have a forge. However, he's getting a forge soon. And I imagine it's going to be some kind of damage multiple. And so he'll probably move up from like being the worst to like probably C tier with that last bonus. Snake Emperor, he's like right here in the middle somewhere, kind of like low B- E kind of tier. He's all poison focused, so you have to have poison in your build. So really strong for boss brawl and like a good set of globals to have, but it's niche specific to poison. Artificer's got pretty solid globals. He's probably somewhere kind of like low A tier. His whole thing is the projectile speed and then actual additional projectile. So for the faction, he gets +1 projectile, which is really, really big. And then he's plus projectile speed everywhere else, which is good, but not great. Kind of like mid-tier globals. Steam Golem, again, like Crystalmancer, all these guys down here are just like, they only got plus damage. And so they're just not all that valuable. Even their faction bonuses aren't great. So like, just unfortunately, like the newer adventure heroes have not been good. Oracle's an interesting one. She's kind of like low B tier. Her whole thing, her whole shtick, I guess, is like based around increasing your XP and seeing the future. So she's got a couple nice XP globals, but they don't really help you with doing damage. And so I don't value them quite as highly as some of like the more like damage multiple type globals. Next up is Necromancer, and which feels kind of nice for me is he's like basically actually got mid-tier globals. So the one you want from Necromancer is the 2.5% global cooldown. That one's awesome. However, all of his other ones are kind of weak. They're mostly just health-based to make his minions stronger. You're missing out on the cooldown, but you're not missing out on much else. So this actually makes me feel kind of good. I thought he would have been higher before I did this analysis, but he's like right smack in the middle. And so that's nice for me to get some revenge on him and make myself feel better that I don't have him. Circuit Breaker, he's another one of these new guys that just doesn't have very good globals, unfortunately. He also doesn't have a forge, which hurts him a lot. If you don't have a forge, you get dinged pretty hard in my rankings because you just can't get a global there. And his other ones are a lot of plus damage, so just not great. Next up is Dark Paladin. He's somewhere right here around Necromancer. His big thing is from his forge. His 3-star forge is a 1.1 times multiple to damage, which is really big. It's like one of the best damage multiples you can get in the game, so that's huge. The rest of his globals aren't great. So overall, 2 really good globals to choose from, and then a couple like not so great. Next up is Werebeast. I have him kind of like low B. He's very much like Necromancer, who we just talked about. He does have a 2.5% global cooldown, which is fantastic, but that's about it. His other one is a bleed in his forge, which is also strong, but again, you need to have bleed, and that's a relatively rare status effect. But other than that, his globals aren't great. So next up is Pumpkin Shade. I have him overall in kind of the B tier. However, you could make an argument that he's S tier purely for his faction bonus, which is 50% increased orbs. That is nuts. I mean, it's so ridiculous that I thought it was a typo, and it should be a typo. If you compare him to someone like Barbarian, who has a 5% increase in hero orbs, 50% increase in hero orbs is just giantly important, especially post-patch 3.40. And it's faction specific, so it really buffs Santa. So like this just makes Santa like even more of a fantastic hero to go farming with. The problem is all of the other globals are crap, and he doesn't have a forge. So you're just getting the one awesome, fantastically crazy S plus tier global, and the hero orbs one. Everything else is bad. So you need Santa in order to make Pumpkin Shade worth it, in my opinion. And so I have him at B-, but you could make an argument that he's like S plus, like one of the best in the game for that, just for that hero orb 50% increase, which is just crazy, absolutely crazy. Nutcracker, unfortunately, has like one of the kind of more mid to low mid global sets in the game. His really, really nice 3-star forge is a 1.05 multiple to damage, but everything else is garbage. And he's a special faction hero, so he doesn't even get like a camp there. I have Monk in like kind of like B- tier. The 1% cooldown reduction is big, right? It's obviously not as good as Werebeast 2.5 or Necromancer 2.5, but you'll take it for sure. And then his other ones are just very defensive, and his faction camp bonus is also defensive evasion. So overall, kind of like below average. You'll take 1% cooldown when you can crap it for sure. So with Reaper, you get both sets of global cooldowns, which is unique to him. You get 2.5% from your 3rd global, and you get 1% from your 3-star forge. That is Reaper's real big value here, is in the global cooldowns. His other cooldowns are okay. You get movement speed, which is nice, and you get critical strike chance from his faction camp, which is also really nice. Dragon Empress I have surprisingly low, somewhere like in this kind of range, maybe in like B, like a low B-. So she's special faction, and that's what hurts her. You get a plus 10 coin bonus from her third global, and then her special faction is plus 1 magical projectiles, which is a really, really strong global, but it only applies to special faction, and they don't synergize well together generally. And so it's nice to have, but that special faction kind of like ding hurts her tremendously. Next up is Frost Wizard. He's also one of these like guys that's like right in the middle. It's nice. A lot of these free-to-play heroes have pretty solid globals, and so they're really good shelf heroes. They make everyone else stronger. He is one of the few heroes that has plus damage to Frozen, so you'll take that. And then he's got status effect duration increase, and again, like Assassin, it's hard to come by. It's only the second time we're talking about it. He's good for those two reasons. Next up is Druid. He is up in here like high B, low A, somewhere. You can make an argument that he should be in the low A's. His big advantage is he's another one of these guys that has a 2.5% cooldown buff, which is awesome. Also, his faction camp bonus is more cooldown, so that's buffing him and Barbarian, which are all like really helpful in boss brawl and some of the later modes. His other globals aren't great, so you're mostly looking for the faction bonus, the faction camp bonus, and his cooldown. He has got a bunch. He brings a bunch of cooldown to the table, but it's all just concentrated in the nature faction. Next up is Big Game Hunter. I have him somewhere like around here. He is really, really good for his increased damage to bosses and elites. So boss brawl in particular comes to mind here. It's why he's the boss brawl hero, but you're going to get a massive damage to boss brawl when you grab him. So you're looking at anywhere from like a 10 to 20% increase in damage against bosses, depending on your faction. Next up is Sentry Specialist, and she's surprisingly not that good. When we were talking about global cooldowns last week in the event, I thought hers were much stronger. That 2.5% cooldown global, I thought would like make her like one of the best, but that's really all she has. Everything else is built around health or damage, like kind of regular adventure heroes. And so you're getting her just for that cooldown. And so her overall set of globals isn't great, including her faction bonuses. Next up is Astral Mage, another one of these C tier set of globals. Unfortunately, she's just all magic damage and then a little bit of projectile speed. So those two things are nice to have, but they're never going to shine. And so in net, not the best hero for globals. Hoplite is a one-trick wonder, and it's for the damage multiple in his 3-star forge. But that's really all you're getting from him. He's just a bunch of other like straight, like kind of like base damage increase. So not great. Glacial Sentinel is another F tier. He just has a ton of armor and a ton of flat damage, which are not what you want in your globals. Say it a whole bunch here, but he's just, you can see it right now just looking at it, right? These are all recent adventure heroes down here. Next up is Clockwork Mage. She's up here somewhere. She's one of the few instances in the game where she doesn't like totally shine. She has nice amp damages against Slow Horde. She has area of effect increase in her faction bonus. Faction camp bonus is cooldown. All of those are fantastic, but nothing that's like globally amazing. So she's just got a bunch of above average things, putting her in like a low A kind of range. Next up is Warlock, who came out of nowhere for me to be the single best hero for their globals. So the big thing with Warlock is you're getting damage amps across most of her globals, plus you get status effect duration, and +1 to magical projectiles. And so she's just great across the board. Almost every one of her globals is awesome, and she's got some of the best in the game. And it might be a he, I can't tell by this small image. Scroll Sage, down here, doesn't have anything interesting, just flat damage. Barbarian is another interesting case, so I have him here kind of like in the mid-low Bs. It gets dinged for being special faction again, but he does have an orb increase, so it's 5% increase to orbs. And you can compare that right to Pumpkin Shade. Pumpkin Shade is a 50% increase to orbs for special faction, and Barbarian is 5%. So Elsa is famously known for her global cooldowns, and it turns out that she's actually the second best. So it makes sense that she's known for them. She's all around increasing damage to frozen enemies, so she's one of the few heroes that has that, and she has it just up and down her global cooldowns. Plus you get a magical projectile increase for her faction bonus, and then more frozen from her hero camp bonus. Plus some status effect duration built in there, right? So she's like the fourth and final person with status effect duration. So all of those combined to make her global set really, really awesome. Rosemother is very much like Plague Keeper. She has almost the exact same set of globals, but they're all just a little bit worse. So you need to have poison in your build in order for her to do damage. So she's really great for boss brawl increases. But beyond that, if you don't have poison, she's not really going to be making your impact on your globals really at all. Rocket Pilot actually has a nice little set of globals. You get area of effect, you get status effect duration, and a damage amp. He's not a great individual hero, but his globals are solid all across the board. So he's like right up here in A tier. Worth grabbing for the globals. Next up is Rune Master. Rune Master has an interesting set. Only him and Fire Mage have increased damage to burning enemies, which is nice because that's part of a lot of builds. And he also has increased damage to stunned enemies and increased damage to frozen. So multipliers on all of those three But you need to have those multiples, and then unfortunately he doesn't have a forge and his faction bonuses are pretty weak. But the multiple damage to status base makes him pretty strong, and so he's a really good shelf hero. Next up is Arcane Mage. She's actually got some of the best globals in the game. So it's nice that the tutorial hero has some of the best globals. You don't really use her ever all that much, but her globals are really great. To make up for the fact that she can only hit one horde at a time, they add plus magic projectiles and penetration like all throughout her build. And so she gets +1 magical projectiles as her third global, which is really, really nice. And then her faction bonus is also +1 magical projectiles. So she's got 2 top tier globals plus a couple other ones that are mid to above average. Next up is Void Raven. He's one of these adventure guys that comes down here to join all of his friends in the adventure tier hero list. Geomancer, unfortunately, is also like one of the worst heroes for globals. He's somewhere down here. He lacks not having a forge, which is really big, and then also his only really nice global is plus 2.5% area of effect. And so beyond that, he's really not all that valuable. Firewizard's actually top 10 somewhere up here. He's got some great globals. So he's the only hero beside Rune Master to have an increase to burning enemies, which is really big. You burn a lot of enemies. That status is pretty frequent. He's also got some nice area of effect, and his forge is a 1.025 increase to damage. So he's got multiples of damage all across his build, plus some area of effect, and it's nice to see a bunch of these free-to-play heroes up here in the top of the globals list. But unfortunately not Spirit Shaman. She's one of the free-to-play heroes that is not very good, and she'll end up down here somewhere. She's just all health regen and health, which is like nice for nightmare mode, but not really all that nice, and that's all she's got. She has a very strange identity in this game, and it's not a good identity. So she's down there, maybe down here. And I think probably Shield Warden's probably more over here. So we can do a little bit of this kind of jigging. So next up is Crazy Tinkerer, who's a very solid global hero. His big thing is area of effect, which is huge. You'll take that anywhere you can get it, and some damage to stunned enemies. Stunned enemies isn't very frequent, and so it's not great, but it's okay. It's really the area of effect and actually some movement speed from him that nets him into the A tier. Echo is great. Echo so I do not like playing this hero. The loss of agency feels really bad, but for being a new adventure hero, she got fantastic globals, and it's all based around critical strike chance. She gets a ton of critical strike chance, both for her faction, for her forge, and for her globals. And so she's high A, even maybe like low S, just for her pure critical strike chance. Energy Mage is a bit of a 2-trick wonder, so he's not like Necromancer, he's a 1-trick wonder. He's got the 2.5% cooldown, but he's also got +1 to penetration. And that is rare. We haven't really talked about penetration at all here. And so that's really, really nice. And will let all of your projectiles go through one horde and hit a second. So you'll take that, especially for something like Frost Orbs, which is big in Nightmare mode. Penetration generally is very strong. Dark Ranger is another example of all these free-to-play heroes being really, really good for their globals. So he's got a 1% global cooldown in his 3-star Forge, a bunch of critical strike chance up and down, and even some projectile speed. So just a great, great hero for all of the globals that he provides. And lastly, we have Blade Master, who's actually got a really strong set of globals. He probably deserves a little bit over here, so let's move these guys over just a tad. Much like Echo, he's just all critical strike chance all time, plus some evasion, which is nice and hard to get. And so he comes up as like a high A hero. And so it's really nice to see, and I didn't really realize this before doing this exercise, how many of the free-to-play heroes are in the top 10, 20 in terms of their globals. So, right, Spirit Shaman's still a mess down here, but you have like basically almost everybody else being at least a B tier. And that's it. And that's my hero global tier list. This is a lot of heroes to go through. There are some very clear differences between the S's and the A's and the C's and the F's. The F's are really just all like kind of like base damage. I do think that Bunny's probably going to jump up to at least C, but the special factions get dinged because they don't have a special faction camp. And those faction bonuses, I'm telling you, are huge. And yeah, and so the big ones here that you could argue with me for are, I think Santa is super strong against for that gold key chance. Pumpkin Shade, you could make a good case, especially if you have Santa, that he's like S+ tier, like almost the best in the game. Those hero orbs now, post patch 3.4.0, are giantly important. And so that's a fantastic global to have for the special faction. What was kind of interesting to me was that some of these heroes, you get wrapped up in them having like one really good global, but really what you want to see is the good globals across their entire set. So this is my hero global tier list. It will get updated on my website, HVH Lounge, constantly. And I'm Coles. I'm a high-level HVH player. You can find me here on Reddit or on Discord. If you want priority answers to your questions, you can sign up for my Patreon, or you can become an executive producer like Cake Invictus, which really helps me produce these videos. And remember, always do your adventures!